Sure, let's go.
Let's go.
Okay. First of all, thank you everybody for hooking on tonight to this Zoom meeting. I'm sure that there's a few of us here who it won't be the first one for today. It's starting to become, it'll become part of the lexicon. I'm sure before we know it, all these sort of terminology. I want to welcome Bronwyn and thank you for Bronwyn for offering to talk about your experiences right now. I want to welcome Julia. I want to welcome whoever born Pixel 2 XL is. And
Bond's trying to see if he can get it to work on his Pixel.
All right. And I'm also, and I'd like to thank Jen also, who offered to give her sort of observations and view of what's going on around right now. I just dropped my picture off because I was really starting to lose speech at my end. I'll put it back on and see if it'll work again. Also, I'd really like to acknowledge that Robert has put in a ton of work to make this happen, and I really want to thank you for that, Robert. Hillary as well. Between Robert and Hillary, they've rounded up everyone to get on this tonight relatively smoothly. So thank you very much.
Excellent instructions on the email. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm sure from we'll just get it. This will become a little bit more regular and a little bit more normal, and we'll all be unfazed and know what we're doing, and hopefully not getting undressed in front of the screen. I don't know how anyone could make mistakes like that. Oh, was that? Oh, damn. So listen, let's kick off. I'd like to ask Cynthia if she wants to kick us off tonight with what would be normally a moment of inspiration. But I asked Cynthia to think about that because she's, I think we're all unbelievably just, overwhelmed with gratitude from the people who work in hospitals right now in the healthcare system. And Cynthia is sort of, I don't think she's been in there sort of every day, but she's still in it and is working with people who are dealing with issues every day. So I wanted to throw it over to her to see if she has any moments of inspiration before we kick off. So thank you, Cynthia.
Thanks. I don't know if it's inspiring. I think it is, but so I run clinical trials in cardiology, right? So I'm not actually in the hospital so much anymore right now because everything is on hold. We're just following patients. But every day we get, and I go into the hospital 1 to 2 times a week only. But what measures have been taking place in the last few weeks in preparation for the big wave have been working. So what's happening at St. Paul's is really remarkable because they've created a list of all the staff who could possibly work in all areas that become overwhelmed to choose a job. So they've got a list of everybody at the hospital, and those who are also retired or semi-retired are being called back, kind of in a reserve in case it gets out of hand. They have discharged and transferred as many patients as they can from the hospital, so the hospital census is down. We have at St. Paul's right now only 8 patients in hospital with COVID. They've created so none of the elective surgeries are happening right now. It would be terrible to actually be waiting for heart surgery or having any of these devices that I deal with, implants being done, because now everything's on hold until further notice. But so the 5B, which is our cardiac recovery area for surgery, that is now a COVID ward. We have 8 hospital patients with COVID. 4 of them are in the ICU and they are intubated. We haven't had any new deaths there, but overall, I just wanted to give you the April 9th update from what I get every day at work. It showed that 53,000 plus patients have been tested in BC, a total of 50 deaths. 30 of those deaths were from long-term care facilities. The new cases today were 34. Total in-hospital patients are 132 patients. In ICU beds, there's 68. This is in the province. It's pretty outstanding when you think about the rest of the country where everything is still doubling, it seems. Ontario and Quebec are really overwhelmed already. Vancouver Coastal has slightly different numbers. I mean, there's within Vancouver Coastal, there's a number of hospitals. It's not just Vancouver General, but of all the Vancouver Coastal hospitals, there's 52 patients in hospital. 15 of those patients are in ICU. 13 of them are ventilated. So we're still, it's still doable. At the hospital, everybody are being taken care of very well. They have they've set up these relax and break rooms for staff who are dealing with the COVID patients, so that they get a chance to decompress. They've done these drop-in PPE kind of sessions for the staff to understand how to put the equipment on and how to take it off properly so that they're safe when they are taking care of patients. There's wellness tips every single day online for us to kind of wake up to, if you can imagine, when you log on. They do Zoom for healthcare workers instead of, so virtual health is happening in place of actual consultations. So way less face-to-face. I talked with a colleague of mine from the cath lab this morning, and she was saying that, in fact, they only do the really urgent cases. The number of heart attack patients coming in is way down, which I thought is really interesting. How can that change because of COVID? But maybe they're giving more of these clot-busting drugs intravenously before taking them to the cath lab, and only the really super serious crushing, I don't know, I can't quite explain it. I don't think she could either. But she said it's really quiet. By 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they're pretty much done their slate of patients. And she doesn't expect to be called in all weekend. The call has been really quiet. So I guess that's all good.
Well done.
Other than that, I think we're prepared. The hospital has postponed, like I said, the urgent cases. They've supply line chain for any of this medical equipment and the personal protection equipment is being worked on, and they're ensuring that these supplies are being managed and distributed according to priority, obviously. They've talked about how to re-sterilize equipment that might be reused as opposed to just being thrown away the way we normally would. So I think we're in a really good place here. I'm confident. I can tell you walking around downtown is a little bit spooky because there's far fewer people there, but everyone's being really responsible and, doing the 6 feet kind of distancing. I could still order my Starbucks coffee, which I was surprised. You go in, you tell them what you want, and they kind of all get it ready, and it's like a takeout window, but I wasn't deprived of my coffee today, so anyway. Feel assured that I think we're gonna do okay. As long as everyone over this long weekend continues to keep it under control and keep apart, and we can maybe slow this progression down, because the cases are dropping off. The curve is coming down in our province, so cross your fingers it keeps going that way. Anyway, that's it. I have nothing else to say.
Cheers to
Excellent what you
self-isolation.
said. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyway, now what happens on Bowen? We'll hear about that.
Bronwyn, thank you, Cynthia. That was a bit of inspiration, given what's going on and all this sort of avalanche of negative news that's
Yeah.
coming through. So, thank you, Bronwyn. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for being our fearless editor, and I was hoping that you would let us know how life has been for you, what the challenges you're facing right now, and how also we can support as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was great to hear, Cynthia. I want to hear more. I don't want to talk. Yeah, so how's life been? It's changed a lot. Like over this month, I don't know if anybody else has gone through this, but there was that intense period at the beginning, that first week when people started staying home. Like for me, it was when the Trudeaus started isolation, was when I stayed home the next day, because I was like, if they are getting sick, it's everywhere. And if I get sick, nobody is there to do the news. And that was sort of my first thinking that, maybe we have a role to play in what's about to unfold. So my work itself hasn't changed that much. My job is still to gather the news, to keep people informed. In some ways, it's more important to keep people inspired. After that first week of intense news, people stopped paying attention. I found they stopped clicking on the news stories. They weren't engaging with the posts, and they seem to be looking for something else. And I think that's the role of the undercurrent right now, has been just to stay alive and to sort of breed community connections. So I work exclusively from home. I lay out the paper from home. I do all of my interviews by phone, as all the Muni is, from what I understand. And it's a lot of monitoring Facebook for rumors. And if I see a rumor, I try to get a story going or regurgitate one from the past. Those early days were about sort of staying on top of the information as it was changing. So there were 5 days there where I didn't sleep. I was constantly checking the news, or checking Facebook, for what businesses were open and closed and what people were worried about. And that's calmed down. Now it's much more talking to people about how they're coping. And being a record of how COVID is affecting the island. I just ran through a lot in like 20 seconds. Yeah, so
you talked about at the very start, you talked about feeling like you had a certain level of responsibility.
Yeah.
Paraphrasing, but you felt this sense of responsibility to both get accurate news out, and I'm sure there's a major part of wanting to, or an integral part of that is also wanting to reassure in people who are more just naturally sort of anxious for whatever reason. They might be anxious for their grandkids, they might be anxious for themselves because they're in an older age bracket that may be affected. They may have parents in a home, but it's very interesting to understand, and also very cool to understand that you're feeling that sense of responsibility. Does it of the work that you've done before, have you felt similar responsibilities at other times, or have you reflected or been able to reflect on how reporters around the world deal with this sort of stuff on a scales when they're living in sort of war-torn countries and stuff? Do you think about that at all?
I do. The thing about Bowen that's different from the sort of other places is when you're a community reporter like me, is that you're sort of heavily invested in the community, and you know the weight and the connections behind everything you write, and you know, you see the person in the grocery store if you've affected their life in any sort of way. So that is how it's different. And obviously the stakes, you know, in a war-torn country, you're reporting for an external audience rather than an audience in the location. This is a more sustained sort of where I found it really the reporting and staying on top of things very important. But every couple of months, I'm sure you guys find there's a crisis. So when I first arrived, my first thing was the week that Colin Ruloff died.
Right.
So, and now, you know, the community is hurting, and, you know, they're looking for comfort, and and there's a lot of anger within the community. And then after, and you know, that sort of hurt you build on, and then and look for what people need in that, besides telling the straight news. What was the next one after that? And then there was Gerald getting beaten up. And another time where the community is fractured in one way or another, and people are looking for facts, and they're looking to understand what happened, and sometimes that's not possible, and sometimes they're not gonna like what the answer is, and sometimes I can't share that because, you know, it's in the case of Gerald, it was because it's under police investigation, and we're governed by pretty strict laws, but of what we can and cannot publish. And I'm also very conscious of being in a small town. Any detail I publish, you know, it's gonna, hopefully it goes through sort of the consequences, especially for people in more vulnerable situations. And then a few weeks after that, there was something. But every few months there's something. This has just been like a month-long something, where you're looking for ways, you're sort of seeing those points of tension and addressing them. Right now I'm finding it, I'm sort of at a holding pattern. You know, I imagine like a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure it does. And you also wrote about helping, you know, with that many people are asking to, I guess, publish or help with mental health sort of tip. Mm-hmm. Can you go into that a little bit?
Really, it's just people want to. I haven't written it. Mostly, I go and ask for expert sort of stories, and so sometimes that means sourcing. That first edition I did post COVID, or like after COVID really sort of started deeply affecting our lives. I was sourcing stories from our sister publications, because Bowen is really, really good for sending in stories. But at that point, I wanted to make sure that it was to a really high standard. And so, you know, it's easy to say, oh, this helps, that helps, but I wanted that to come from an authoritative source and something that can offer that sort of comfort. But it continues on, and Colleen O'Neill has been gathering some of the counselors to start a week-to-week counseling section of the paper. So if you've seen this week's paper, we had something from Julie Hughes. And then next week, I think we're having something from Carolyn Nesbitt, I believe. And so it's that's one thing people have been asking for. Essential services, details about the essential services. Of course, for that, it puts me in a really weird position because I'm trying to keep a paper alive. And the way you do that is with advertising. And so finding that line between what people need to know and what people are willing to advertise, and not compromising, journalistic integrity, is complicated. Tracy's my ads counterpart, and we had a lot of discussions about it because I don't know anybody more passionate about local news than Tracy. She's been in the business for 30 years and really, has been where the entire team is super experienced with the exception of me. So it's been a really great learning from them. And so Tracy adds some guidance in that respect. I'm trying to think what else people ask for. Like emergency services, that first edition was a lot of really just straight up facts.
That was a great addition.
Oh,
Excellent.
thank you. Yeah, I did that. When I'm saying I didn't sleep for days, I'm not kidding. Yeah, and
It showed.
thanks. Yeah, and I'm trying to think. I had yeah.
Can I
think.
ask a question? Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I had the pleasure of talking to my my drug dealer of sourdough this afternoon, and it came up. We started talking about the undercurrent, and Robert expressed a concern about the undercurrent and its ability to survive this. And so I'm asking a question: what's going on with the undercurrent? How's it handling? Because it is, as Robert pointed out, you're either on Facebook or the undercurrent. That's your news source. So, anyway.
How's it doing? Obviously, I've been thinking about this since Robert asked me to do this. Well, and obviously since this news came out on Facebook and everything, that the undercurrent is always, or newspapers in general are sort of always on that edge. You're not, no community journalist is in this to make money. And so you're always on that edge. Being able to survive this, in some ways we're poised better than the big guys because it doesn't take a lot. I mean, it's two people, a very kind cartoonist, and a publisher who has other papers. So and then so it's print costs. If people keep advertising, the essential services, and we've had some really kind donations, we can do it. But it depends how long this goes on for, and we are really, our advertising base are the businesses that many of them might not survive this too. So it feels awful to be, the one going, oh no, we might go under, because I know that so many businesses and so many places are going through this too. What will it take? Also people's continued support and concern and keeping rating. If we're relevant, then we're more likely to be kept alive. That sort of thing. And, you know, people telling, oh, did you read that in the Undercurrent, or that sort of thing, and letting me know if you want to hear something, if you want to read something, if something's wrong. That's really important that I know, or, you know, unfair. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And how many subscribers are there?
How many
I know we pay
subscribers?
annually, but,
More than 300.
okay, thank you.
Bronwyn, just to give you a little tiny weeny glimpse of hope, I don't subscribe to Facebook. So I'm entirely reliant on the Undercurrent for, well, and the Muni. Jen, nod in your direction as well. But I did want to ask a more general question, if I may. As a local reporter, how does the fact that you might meet somebody that you've written a story which is not entirely complimentary about them, you might meet them in the store the following day, how does that play into life as a journalist in this sort of community?
From the start, that's been something I'm very aware of. In some ways, I think it means that a lot more thought goes into every single story, because if you're going to put a detail out there about someone that they might not like, you better be darn well sure that's important to put out there. And sometimes I don't go there, to the detriment, I think, of I mean, I don't want to say responsible news, but I think I could push harder in some cases if I wasn't coming up to people.
Must be a difficult balance on
yeah,
occasion.
but it's my job. It's not my job to make decisions. Like, I make decisions about what to include and what not to include, and that way it influences people. But if you think about, you know, municipal council, whenever I'm writing something about them and critiques of them, I'm always very aware that they get paid less than me for me to critique them, you know? And municipal staff, like, you know, these are people who, you know, they're accountable to council and or to people, and it is important to sort of watch that. But we all have to live in this community, and it doesn't help to just insult people, no matter how frustrated you are. So
it didn't stop people when the forum was active, and there was things like Cape Roger Curtis and the non-grass field and so on. So perhaps you should take some encouragement that it is possible to be slightly edgy and not get thrown off the island altogether.
Yeah, well, and Facebook. I mean, that Bowen Island, everything else is, you know, it can be very.
Nasty.
Not unkind, and sometimes it calls for sometimes you can't be kind, and that is good, you know, that's how some things get done, but a lot of time it's probably unwarranted, in my opinion. Yes,
I think it's really important to note that Facebook, while we all compare, we say our sources are Facebook or the Undercurrent, Bronwyn, you don't put it out there often enough that, you know, first of all, you're paid, you're professional, you're a journalist, this is your job. And so many people go to Facebook without realizing that it's not necessarily the truth. It hasn't necessarily been well researched. And I think, you know, in some ways you don't promote yourself enough, because your page that gives all the information about everything that's going on Bowen is really very thoroughly researched, and you've gone out and found all these. The problem I find is that there's too much information, and you're trying to discern what's accurate, what isn't, what's relevant, and you're the one who is filtering all that through on your website. And I don't think enough people are aware of that and know the value of that expertise.
Thank you.
I think you need to toot your own horn more often. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. Yes,
After all, you do have a paper to do it with.
I do. Well, I mean, it's funny because every Tuesday evening, I don't sleep on Tuesday nights because Wednesday is my deadline day. And Tuesday at 9 p.m., I'm pretty sure the paper's not happening this week. I just finished number 99. That's the edition that just came out this week, and I'm still certain the next day that is not happening. So it's but it's a pretty awesome responsibility and privilege to be able to communicate with the island. And that is, sorry, that's one of these things that I was meaning to talk about and got lost. That is something that I really want to do during this crisis, is that people are going to be more and more isolated. You know, it's all well and good. And in that first week, there was so much energy around, you know, all these ideas, and people were going to live stream everything, and, you know, they were connecting and they were checking on their neighbors. And that's hard to do when you are, you know, emotionally just wrecked. And I mean, I find it hard, and this is my only job. You know, I'm dealing with my own personal stuff on top of this. So I can't imagine, you know, thinking of all your neighbors, you know, a month in and you've lost your job and this and that. So that is one really important role I see for the Undercurrent in this crisis, is being that voice. You know, people are familiar with me. Like if you read it regularly, hopefully you have sort of some idea of my voice, and I'll still be there, like talking to you in some way, and I want that to continue, especially for people who are quite isolated. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I see that Cynthia has her hand up. Did you want to ask a question, Cynthia? Or did you not mean to raise your hand? No. Okay.
No, I didn't. That was a mistake.
Okay.
I'm looking online at the latest Undercurrent. Sorry.
It just came out. It just came out today. So, and I'm finding sometimes if you're not going into the store, also it's not just like there. So you're not. Oh, I'll get my Undercurrent with my groceries. That's a problem too. That is something that you can help us with, is reminding people to get their Undercurrent with their groceries.
I have a question.
Yes.
Well, I have first thing to say is that I think it's important that people should subscribe to the Undercurrent. It makes such a difference to, first of all, to have it delivered to your mailbox every week, and that way also we can help to keep things going at the Undercurrent. My question is, what do you think that Rotary can do to help you in keeping the Undercurrent going? Because we would be, all of us, be very sad if it went under. And it sounds like some of your sister newspapers may be going under. Is that right?
The Vancouver Courier has already temporarily closed, and the other one that's quite quiet that I don't think people realize is the Lillooet Bridge News has temporarily ceased production. That one was Ma Murray's paper, if you know Ma Murray. Mm-hmm. So that's and that's the one where I also feel heartbroken, because it's a small community, and in small communities you're the only source of fact-checked, not Facebook news, and not from the local government. I mean, you know, the municipality, as much as you do need somebody to just be like, hey, this is what's happening, not just what's released in a press release. As much as I like many of the people, almost everybody at the municipality, what can Rotary do? Really, the sharing the importance of the Undercurrent, and talking with friends who possibly don't read it or don't read it regularly, or, you know, say, oh, I get this every once in a while. That is the single most important thing. Or when you see something wrong, or see people saying, you know, oh, they don't have this and that, let me know. Because I think we had to do some work in rebuilding some trust in some relationships. And I think trust is one of the more important, Jennifer. I think you, so yeah, that's number one.
Okay.
Is just that person-to-person relationship. And I mean, we're beyond that. I can't think of a ton of ways. And when you see stories, let me know. But you're very good at that, Hillary. I love your stories. And Damien's always been a great supporter. Well, you all have. I know almost all of you guys. So it's you're already doing it. You know, you're really engaged community members. If you're in Rotary, and that's
great. Well,
yeah.
thanks.
Thank you, Bronwyn. Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions?
I have a question I'd like to ask.
Go ahead.
So much stuff is changing on Bowen, like everybody's hours or the days they're open or that kind of stuff. And in your first edition, you really kind of, I think, covered a lot of that. And I'm wondering, like, I'm noticing it's changing day to day. Is there any way of having a section that's kind of the hours this week, or each of the businesses kind of who's completely closed or who's still doing through the side window kind of things? Like, is there a way to keep a little column that would be just the updates for this week?
Yeah,
like, I know you have stuff like that anyway, but
I do have this stuff online, because there's that evergreen story that's, I have 4 stories frozen at the top of our site, and that's the number one place I would, or well, I mean,
okay,
for the undercurrent, that's the place I would check. When it comes to the space in the paper, this week or next week or sometime, I will do an update with the essential services, or the most important things to know. But space in the paper has lately been sort of at a premium, because I've had quite a few people submitting things, like the Health Center Foundation had their Zoom thing, and so balancing what needs to be in the paper that week. Sometimes my stories could be cut down a bit, but that would be.
I think maybe what I was thinking too is it would be more a story than something, but some of the procedures that our businesses have put in place are actually quite awing, like quite amazing how they figured out how to meet all constraints, still serve the public and whatever. It's like they're local heroes, right? And it's just kind of would be, I just thought it would be a neat story of, like, I didn't know the procedure that in the general store that you had to stand behind the line going down the aisles and stuff like that. Like, I was almost going to ask them to put up on their front door how to proceed when you're inside the store, that kind of stuff. And maybe it could go out as a general thing, but maybe you could do that on your Facebook, which I have to admit I've never really read the Undercurrent online. We get it in the mailbox, which is beautiful. So I check it there. So anyway,
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I love the story of, like, the procedures, like the going through, because I didn't even know that they've been limiting people in the Ruddy for a week, and I'm only there when it's empty. So I know about, their ordering process, but their details I definitely miss. So that's a great story. I love that.
Yeah, like Cocoa West is through their side window, which I didn't even know they had. It just, I didn't even know how to take the ferry. That the ferry had the tap outside their screen, and there's some people that haven't even gone off Bowen. from all of this to kind of know that each area set up a very slick protocol of how to do it. So just an idea. I would have
Yeah.
appreciated kind of knowing some of those things before I kind of didn't stand behind the line, right?
Yeah. I haven't been off the island either, so I haven't seen BC ferries in a month.
It's as slick as all get out how they set it up. I went off once and they've got a little plastic screen in front and a little slot they slide your ticket through, and you tap on the outside of the screen. So you get out of the car and tap. So they never touch your stuff except just your ticket coming back to you. I was impressed.
Yeah.
Just a heads up, there's no lineup for the beer and wine store at 10:30 in the morning.
Doesn't it open at 11?
Hey guys, I'm going to give Bronwyn a breather for a minute, and I'm hoping that because I'm just keeping my eye on the clock, I'm hoping that Jen would jump in if at all possible. Jen, to give us let us know what I can only guess how busy you've been, but it'd be great to get a little sort of snapshot of your life right now.
Sure, yeah. Oh, snapshot of my life. I can tell you what really that is the sum of what's happening in my life anyway. So it occurred to me when Robert was asking about the latest update that maybe you guys.
Oh, she's taking off her clothes.
I know. It's maybe you guys haven't seen it, so I'm happy to just kind of summarize that, or do you want to just ask questions? I don't know. But
yeah, just give us a summary and we'll ask questions from there.
Okay, sure. So we just released our 5th update from the Emergency Operations Center, and if you have any questions about the municipal response, you're welcome. Always the webpage, right on the front page, there's a link to the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, and there's tons of information about not just what we're doing, but frequently asked questions that we're getting when people phone in, and all sorts of fun information. The mayor's updates, Gary's doing video updates that are posted there, and YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. So today's update was very much in anticipation of the long weekend. So, we talked a little bit about what we've been doing to ask visitors not to come to Bowen. Mentioned that the mayor has done an update today, a video message, mentioned our frequently asked questions. We've we've officially asked accommodation providers to stop advertising in response to specific complaints received. Essentially, people find an ad on Craigslist or wherever and send it to mayor and council complaining. So that was in response to that. We have a plan in place for the long weekend. So everything from working with the province to get the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to change the highway signs, the digital signs on Highway number 1 as you're coming to Horseshoe Bay and up the Sea to Sky. So working with Metro Parks to see what can be done to discourage use from non-residents of Crippen Park. We've sort of signed on some auxiliary staff to act as social distancing ambassadors in the Cove this weekend. So they'll be on hand to sort of support local businesses if they end up feeling overwhelmed, and also to just educate people if we end up having hordes or crowds. They'll be friendly, identified, and with hula hoops to demonstrate what social distancing looks like. We've put signs up everywhere and sandwich boards. We've closed Snug Cove docks, so obviously still available for the people who have paid for winter moorage and been there all winter, and available for water taxis and obviously medical calls. But for transient boaters here for the weekend, we are not open for business. And like I said, we're helping some of the general store and releasing education every chance we get about what the rules are and how to stay within the lines. And then
I guess I better read that.
Our update also talks about the support we're giving to local businesses, from helping out the general store and the post office, which you've maybe even seen because it's a pretty visible thing, doing traffic management at the building center where they're open, those days that they're open to the public, helping with childcare for essential workers, hand sanitizer, etc. We're also working or trying to work as much as possible with the business community to at least understand some of the impacts and start to look, maybe not at recovery at this stage necessarily, but advanced planning, whatever that looks like. And then the list goes on. There's actually a list of all the things we're working on that I haven't gotten into. I think I'll just stop there and direct you to that EOC update for all the information you could possibly need.
Hey, Jen, can you give us an update? I read your, I had a quick read of the email when it came out today. And I was wondering about, I saw that the Muni is helping out the food bank with helping to transport food back and forth. And it's sort of an interest to see what's happening with the food bank. And originally we, talked about perhaps being able to be a body of people that could help with that. And then I think the next day, I think it might have been the very next day, there was sort of, Rotary International came out with rules about Rotarians and what they should be doing, and not rules per se, but advice about being involved in the community at the early stages, and it's better to stay home and all that stuff. So if you could give us an idea of how the community right now is distributing food to people that need it. Do you have an idea about that?
You bet. So a couple different sort of things you're touching on there, but the food bank has certainly changed their operations, as I think they've fairly well publicized. So they are still available to people who need them and still open for business. They have changed the way that they operate. And
we're off.
And the assistance we're providing to them is
What's happening over there?
going in to pick up the dry goods that they don't purchase on island. None of the volunteers in that organization feel comfortable going to town and going grocery shopping anymore, which is obviously reasonable. So we've identified staff that are more than willing to do that for them. So we're working with that group to make sure that they continue to receive the food that they distribute. And then in terms of actually distributing to people who are in self-isolation, quarantine or just vulnerable, not just, or vulnerable individuals who are choosing to self-isolate, we are trying to support Artisan Express to whatever degree possible. At this point, they seem to, they've indicated that they have it under control, but I'm in pretty regular contact with Heather and kind of doing some advanced planning for how we might support them in future as the demand for that potentially increases.
Jen, can I just ask you, I heard today that the pub are offering people the opportunity to buy direct from, is it Cisco, when they put their order in? And I wondered if the food bank would be interested in joining them.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think there are tons of different options for potentially adjusting how they do their purchasing. So it's really working with those volunteers who have the way of doing things that they've had for a long time and finding out what works for them in terms of adjusting it. But I know it's actually Leo from the library that's working with them, and he's got all sorts of plans for how it can be done differently. So I think that the Cisco order's already been raised as a potential option.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
That's okay.
Any other questions for Jen?
I have a quick question. You say that the dock has been closed to transient people. Is Union Steamship Company doing that as well?
They're not closed, although their website indicates that they're not taking reservations through, I think it's till the end of May, and that they'll reopen at that
Okay,
time, so.
that's good.
Allard?
Yeah.
So first of all, well, Jen and I attended a Bowen Island Foundation meeting on the 28th of March, which is trying to address enhancing resiliency on Bowen. And so first to Bronwyn, that during that meeting, it was very much recognized that your work with the Undercurrent and specifically the online efforts to bring everything COVID to Bowen Island was well recognized, and there were a lot of folks on that circulation list for this meeting at Zoom. So thanks again for all of that. It's fantastic to have you, and very important. Certainly part of the resiliency program, I'm sure. And anyway, so there's probably need to speak a little bit about the foundation resiliency piece. And then I guess I had a question for Jen as to whether or not you know who's moving that resiliency program, furthering the resiliency program. Is that a foundation? Is that like Holly Grath's responsibility, or has she kept in touch with you about how to roll out some of the initiatives that were discussed?
Yeah, sure. We've been in touch quite a few times over the last, since that meeting. And I believe that to my knowledge, a draft memorandum of understanding is on the council agenda for Tuesday. So there's a draft agreement between the municipality and the community foundation to move forward with that program or plan.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So, and I was wondering, because the reason we were invited to this Zoom conference or meeting was to collect as many of the charities. Now we're a society, but we can behave as a charity with, Damien, your help. However, there's lots of areas where I think the Rotary Club can assist in this, right? And assist in rolling out, whether in cash or in kind or however we manage, to help bolster up the resiliency effort, which is coming. And one thing that I was wondering is whether I should ask Holly to speak to us as a group next week, perhaps, or when she's available, to see if we could roll out, or she could help roll out some of the ideas and some of the initiatives of this resiliency foundation resiliency effort, right? Is there a receptivity to having another Zoom call next week and have my reaching out to Holly and seeing if she would speak?
Great idea.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Today I was in the garden. Oh, this is for Jen. And talking with Ann, and it was so lovely sitting in the garden. We realized that, soon we'll be able to walk down to the beach and swim. And I was wondering if the municipality has a plan about beaches and stuff. With all that stuff the federal government showed with the COVID response times, from, I forget what it is, 10% or something up to 80% of people catching COVID-19. Are there plans to block the beaches off?
It's not something we're planning on doing in the immediate future.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it hasn't come up on the radar. I mean, so much of what the municipality does is complaint driven. So
yeah, right.
Are people going to complain about it?
I think that Bronwyn was getting ready for the big scoop there. That'll be, municipal closes beaches.
I've seen, the calls on social media to close the parks, and I'm curious what the sort of broader population thinks about that, and it'll have on the local community, especially when the province is saying, go for walks if you can do it, if you can do it well. So
I see a lot.
I'm not guessing anymore what the future holds.
I see a lot of news items about people gathering in knots in parks in the city. My experience when I've been out on the street with Bowen Islanders, we walk on opposite sides of the street, we talk to each other, but this business of staying far apart, and I don't think 6 feet is enough. I don't see that we need to close the beaches. I just think we have a smart enough population that we can enjoy a resource together and still stay far apart to protect each other.
Here, here.
Yeah.
And I enjoy walking down to the beach, by the way.
So do I.
And that's something we are very lucky here on Bowen Island. People are told to stay indoors. For a lot of people, indoors is a very small, cramped space. I have this big office to rattle around in a house with a baby and a little boy and my daughter, and I've got a yard to walk out in. I can walk out on the street. This business of self-isolating here on Bowen Island makes us very privileged. I think we're very lucky to be here. And I think a lot of people don't have that, and being told to stay indoors is extremely limiting. So I'm hoping that we have a sophisticated enough population that we can go out, that we can go into the park and still protect ourselves just by the fact that people respect what now is a much larger distance around all of us.
Richard has a question. Do we know if there's actually active cases of what the people have it on Bowen?
Yeah, everyone wants to know, eh? It's interesting, the provincial health officer just did an op-ed on this exact topic on why they're not releasing the information. But essentially since the beginning, the short answer is no. Especially since the beginning of this event, we've been asking, all local governments have been asking the health authorities and the province to tell us. And they've been pretty firm in that since the beginning across the board. So we won't know essentially unless we have to. So there are exceptions where they'll tell the community if there's a chance that they were exposed. And that actually happened in Pemberton. I think there was a council meeting, don't quote me on this, but some kind of meeting where there was an exposure and they had to let the community know because there was a chance they were infected. But barring situations like that, they won't tell us. So we did have an individual self-identify on social media on Bowen as having COVID. And those sort of public declarations are the only indication we might get.
Okay, thank you.
And presumably that sort of public declaration you take with a grain of salt. It may be true, it may not. You have no way of knowing. It could be a dog.
I asked him for a doctor's note, so he had it.
Oh, really? Interesting. I didn't know dogs got doctor's notes.
Oh, dogs? Oh.
Not the dog.
And did he test negative?
Well, you know the saying, everybody on internet's a dog.
Right. Or a robot, a bot.
No, in this case, the NERP group actually was quite useful in supporting that person and staying home and making sure that they were able to self-isolate safely and properly for 2 weeks and not, risk the health of the rest of the community. So I think it was actually a good example of the community coming together to make sure someone was taken care of.
Thank you.
Interesting.
I did hear something today while on the ferry, and apparently after this weekend we might have fewer runs with our Bowen ferry. It might only be a couple of extra runs a day that they're cutting, but ridership is way down, and they don't have any sick staff on our run yet, which is really good. I hope they keep it that way. But
yeah, I mean, you don't have to be in my position to sort of see the writing on the wall as far as ferry runs go and to look at what's happening in other communities. Just today, they cut a ton of runs to the southern Gulf Islands. So it's essential. There's never going to be no, again, I should stop trying to predict the future, but it's really unlikely that there would ever be no runs to Bowen on a day, but the service could probably be severely curtailed. It'll be interesting to see sort of how they make that decision and how much input we have, if any, and what it's made on. I mean, anyway, I could speculate till the cows come home, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Folks, I'm just looking at the time, and it seems that our hour has disappeared. I'm just wondering if there's any final questions that haven't been covered for Jennifer or Bronwyn especially. Anyone wanted to ask that desperate question?
Thanks.
I'll just say thanks to Bronwyn. I took a ton of notes while you were writing. That was really fascinating, and I've just always appreciated your reporting. It's very fair, and I love your editorials are entertaining. I feel like we have this little glimpse into your mind sometimes, but thank you. I'm really hopeful that, like every Bowen business, we all just make it through this. Thanks for coming to speak to us.
Thank you, and thank you for always being so helpful when I ask. Thank you, guys. Thanks for asking me. This is really, I realize I haven't done public speaking in so long, so sorry. It's all, I really had prepared.
Thank you, Bronwyn, and thank you, Jen. And thank you, Cynthia, for kicking us off. We have the ability to do in this modern age to do a very quick virtual happy sad, and I'm going to start off with Hillary. Hillary, you got anything to report?
Well, yeah, this week we were really happy to be released from quarantine after 14 days of having a terrible time in our lovely garden. But it's been really nice to walk in the park, and that's been really happy. Sad because we have a daughter and family who live in the United States, and I'm not sure when we're going to see them again. So that's the sad. Thanks.
All right, Robert, you're up.
I'm delighted that Bronwyn and Jennifer talked to us tonight. First of all, this feeds my Thursday night Rotary habit, and I'm really glad that we're all here and can see each other and can talk. I think in a small community, particularly like this, where there are often so many divisions and so many rumors going on, to have a newspaper that does research the facts, does present what's going on in a fair and unbiased manner, is a really important part of the community and very vital. And so its survival, I think, is very important to all of us. I am once again just listening to Jennifer talk, aware of what a caring and supportive community this is, and how glad I am to be here. And thank you all very much tonight for coming here.
Right on. How about you, Corinne?
You mean Lynn?
Lynn.
I don't use my first name hardly ever, only at Rotary, I guess. Maybe a couple of happy thoughts. I'm actually incredibly impressed with, just as you said, how our newspaper has looked after very serious and important issues and kept us all up to date. How Jen, like at council and stuff like that, the emergency, I'm going to have to go read those EOC updates. So thank you for reminding me about that. I think the thing, maybe the happy thought that I want to share is when we came back from the States at the beginning of March and had colds, so didn't know if we were sick or not, so quite terrified about it. Did that 14-day whatever, and then hearing all the stores, each one closing after another. I don't think I'd ever been that down, terrified, or just frantic ever in my life. And my kids stepped up, and like I was worried about, we didn't have food to kind of really, I have all kinds of junk food, as in gluten-free stuff that Richard wouldn't touch if he paid him. But it was like I didn't have the sustainables, like I didn't have the dry goods and stuff like that, because I quarantined ourselves as soon as we got home. So Hillary, I don't know how you managed yourself. And it was kind of like watching communities pull together that to make sure how, if you needed bread, you could call the artists and that kind of stuff. But in our home, when our kids actually they arrived at the met them in a parking lot. They put food in the back of my car, wouldn't let me out of the truck, and I got caught the next ferry home. Richard and I seem to be really celebrating every meal, that when we're cooking, it's not quite gourmet, but even a hamburger tastes pretty fascinating or interesting. And it's kind of like this happy thought of meal times are really important, and I'm appreciating it more maybe. And I guess I just want to share that. My sad thought is, yes, it's Easter coming up, and our kid haven't seen one of our sons from beginning of January. So it's like, oh God, it's gonna be a tough weekend. Missing everybody. But yeah, I'm hoping that you guys are also grateful, and thank you for maybe the food we're eating. I imagine everybody is, like, maybe this is what disease has done, is just made us really appreciate some of the little things, like sharing a meal with your husband, that kind of thing. Anyway, sorry to take so long.
No, perfect words. Perfect words. How about you, Allard?
You there?
Couple of things, I guess, that stand out. I think I have left the island 3 times since end of January. I just and so isolation is in a way part of our lives generally anyway. But what's happened for us is when school stopped and the kids came home for spring break, that's when it all hit in earnest, and so for the first week, I didn't see my daughters. They basically just Netflixed their brains to bits. And then when they emerged from that, I guess there's nothing left to watch on Netflix. I don't know if that was possible, but so they emerged from that. And then the second week, it was just, there's a lot of anxiety and anger in the house. So we dealt with that. And then the third week now, let's say from 2 weeks ago on, something kind of crazy started to happen, which is, we started to play games together, do puzzles together. And this last week has actually been quite a pleasant experience, and I fully dread having to end my isolation at some point in the future. So it's we're very lucky to be where we are, and the ferry stopped running from Horseshoe Bay to Nanaimo, so I physically can't even get to my work. So that's a good thing too. I have no incentives or motivations to do anything other than be in my house with my kids and my family. So it's all working out.
Yeah, it's good. What about you, Ross? Thank you. What about you, Roscoe?
Me, I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm always working, so it hasn't slowed down a bit. Get outside every day, work outside. Missing daughter Teal though in Malta. Happy sad.
Right. Are you, Cynthia?
I'm just happy that they've made the Easter Bunny essential. Not that I'm celebrating, but I do love chocolate.
And the tooth fairy.
I actually love and the tooth fairy. Yeah, I actually love the commuting is absolutely a dream right now, and I know I shouldn't be driving, but I still have to go into work every now and then. Funny how our energies change. Mine, it seems to, I've got all this time and I've got all these plans, but it's not happening quite the way I thought it would. Like, I'm not as organized as I thought it would be. But on the other side, we're starting to use up ingredients from the pantry that have been in there for a while, that becoming creative with stuff that hasn't quite gone off. So anyway.
Right on.
Yeah, I'm sad that it's such a strange reality, and I really, really hope that we can keep this from getting out of hand. That's my anxiety coming through. But try to stay zen. I'm doing a Zoom yoga class tomorrow.
There you go.
That's strange.
Yeah, right on. Is it? I'd like to see Mike doing that as well.
I know he needs to stretch. He's pretty straight.
Right on. Right on. Thank you. What about you, Bronwyn?
I really like working from home. I like being isolated. And I get to hang out with the family I live with. So that's really happy. Sad because I have a really big family. Like I have a lot of brothers, and many of them live in the Lower Mainland, and I have one in Switzerland who I wish had come home, but he's staying. So I'm sad because it's Easter and I won't be with my brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough time right now in that regard with family.
Yeah.
Thank you. Steve, you've been quiet tonight.
Yeah, my mom passed away today.
Oh,
Sorry.
Quite
so
possibly
sorry.
COVID related. I'm not, they're doing a test. They haven't quite confirmed that yet. But yeah, so I'm a little quiet. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, we're so sorry to hear that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, sorry to hear that, Steve.
But otherwise, we're doing okay. It's a little harder. Kiko can't have the normal support that she gets because they've shut all that down. So
Right.
her mom has been coming over. Now she has to go through, she lives in Nanaimo. She has to go from DuPont to Tawasin to come all the way up to Bowen. So things get more and more difficult, but we're hanging in there. And fortunately, work is still steady. So that part's good. Yeah.
Is there something that we as a Rotary family can help you out with, Steve?
No, I mean, I have some people that are maintaining contact with Kiko, and we're trying to do the whole video conferencing stuff, so that helps. I don't know. I just have as far as my mom, that's just sort of, I only found out about 4:30 today, so it's all fairly fresh. Yeah.
Oh, we're so sorry.
With you, man.
Yeah. She was 90. Well, 1 week shy of 94. Yeah.
Wow. Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Jen.
you there?
Sorry, muted there. Well, now I'm just sad. I'm sorry, Steve. That's incredibly difficult. But overall, I am grateful. Be healthy and have healthy family and a supportive spouse who makes sure I eat and sleep. So, doing good.
Right on.
Nice to see you all.
Yeah, it's nice to see faces. How about and the friendliest face of all, Vaughan Campbell.
But anyway, I'm really sad to hear about your mom, Stephen. Yeah, we do know that we come into this world and we're going to leave, but it doesn't help, just knowing that fact. I have to say, I'm happy my septic tanks have been emptied today. I am
a very
really...
Bowen remark.
Is that an essential service, Bowen?
Yeah, well, that's what the guy said. He said, we're still an essential service. But he said, we've never been so busy because everybody is worried we won't be an essential service on Bowen. So they had 3 trucks on the island today emptying. And interesting. Good story on the Undercurrent. I want to say thank you just for being such beautiful people. I just cannot express how much I look forward to hanging out with you guys. And yeah, I am very grateful to have you as friends. Thank you.
Agreed.
Loves going back to you, Bowen.
Yeah.
Loves going back to you. What about the quiet and silent Portia Lynn tonight? Is she there?
Is she there?
That was her laugh.
There you are.
Yay!
She's still on mute though.
Oh,
Mute,
Your
unmute.
mic's still muted.
Your mic is still muted.
can you unmute her, Robert?
There you go. We could see
No,
her.
she
How's
knows.
that?
There we go.
That's-
Yeah, that's it.
Sorry.
Thank you, Bronwyn, for giving that talk. I'm sorry I was a little late. I missed out in some of it, but I can appreciate some of the things that you deal with, and I always look forward to the paper every week. And also, I'm reminded I haven't paid my subscription this year, so I will get busy and do that. Sorry, Stephen, about your mother. That's something that we all deal with, and I hope it out to you. All the best. Had a bit of a mishap this week with Janelle. She went into some sort of very deep coughing spell, which I couldn't control. So I got in the car and drove over to Mosquito Creek and saw the vet out on the curb. I wore the mask and the gloves, and she came out in a jogging suit and did the exam, and so we'll take it from there. But she sent me home with hot lemonade recipe for the dog and some codeine, and she's a little better now, so we'll see how it goes.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I'm learning about self-sufficiency and doing things with, on my own, and it's great. I'm learning a lot about making do and how I enjoy leftovers.
Takes planning to have those leftovers.
Definitely it does. So yeah, it's like the old wartime situation where you have a big roast, which I never do, but you have one big meal and then you split it up. So that's all well and good, and I have gotten into the cupboard to see what's there. But I just also want to express my deep appreciation for you all every time I come to this. And something about Zoom, it's very, very, yeah, it's lovely. Lovely to see you each.
Thank you. We love to see you as well.
Let us know if you need any help in some way, shape, or form that we can do from 6 feet away, okay?
Yeah, thanks, Lynn.
Thank you. The ever delightful Sheila Webster.
Okay, thank you. I would like to, first of all, Steve, I'm sorry about your mom. I think that's one of the worst losses to go through. But I would also like to say thank you to everybody and for arranging a Zoom meeting. And it's absolutely great to be with everyone. And it makes me very happy to see everybody up and well and laughing. I think that's wonderful. Well done, folks. Let's keep it up. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Sheila. Peter, last words for you, mate.
Yeah, thank you for leaving me till later. Sad. All the people whose elective surgery are forcing them into continuing pain, continuing worry. I think that's one of the biggest non-direct COVID impacts on a huge number of people. Glad, happy the way the whole island community, the shopkeepers, the emergency service, even the Muni have all sort of pulled together and sort of worked to try and find new ways of doing things and making it work. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Hard to not agree with all of that. Everybody, thank you for tonight.
You didn't do a happy sad.
My happy is that I think that we're in good stead, knowing that there's people like Bronwyn and Jen who are sort of working at the face of this. Cynthia, who's been seeing it from the immediate health perspective, and I think that we're in good stead because of the people that are on this Zoom meeting tonight. This is the basis of our little community, and that's what we're doing. And thanks everyone for that. Steve, there's a ton of love going your way, mate. And if you need anything, please call. And I'd like to, again, thank you to Robert and Rotary for setting up tonight. And I hope that we can get going something. What are your feelings, guys? Should we try to have a weekly or every 2 weeks, given the circumstances, on the Zoom thing? Does anyone have any strong feelings about that?
Why don't we see when Holly can come, because I think that would be great.
Okay. Yeah, good idea. Yeah, good idea.
If she can't come next week, then do it the week after.
Okay. All right. Bronwyn, we're not going to lose the undercurrent. You're here forever with us, all right? Guys, everybody, thank you for tonight. And unless anyone has got something to add, we might as well call it a day, I think.
Okay, well, thanks, Damien.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.
Bye.
Night, everyone.
Good night. Good night. Jen, Robert.
Thanks, Robert.
Thanks, Jen.